Yes, it's Wednesday, but better late than never on a top 10 video. This time, my patrons voted, and it's the top 10 D&D 3.5e races that I want converted to 5e Part 2. However, this time you're only going to be getting a top 7, as I really spent countless hours trying to figure out a top 10. And I was really pushing it. I had it up to like 9 at a point, and then I realized that I didn't actually like 2 of those races, so I cut them back and I replaced a whole bunch, so it's top 7. And there are so many races to look through. They have to do something at least unique enough that I would want to put them in the video, which is where we landed right now. So if you want to see what the rules are for my Part 2 version of D&D 3.5e races I want converted to 5e, stay tuned. I know I said countless hours, but it was really more like 8-ish hours of research. What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and yeah, the rules are pretty simple. It's got to be an official D&D 3.5e published race. By that I mean no homebrew, no D&D wiki, obviously. But there was a lot of funky stuff, right? So that I'm including Dragon Magazine in that. I'm including all of the different campaign settings. I looked through a bunch, right? I went through Eberron, the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, the Diablo book, all the other different books that existed to try to find races I found interesting enough to make it into this video. But I got 7, so if you want to see what they are, let's jump into the video. Number 7. The Neraphim. These are, they're really only kind of in here because they're frog people, and I like frogs and alligators and that kind of reptiles and amphibians in general. But I also like, I guess the Neraph is the singular, Neraphim is the plural. And it's interesting because it says they're often mistaken for slod because they're like a toad-like creature. I should also say this is from the Planar Handbook. That's where you'll find this race here. And, it goes on to say they travel through limbo, they're nomadic, so they're, extraplanar creatures. It's in the Planar Handbook. I figure you would expect that at this point. But, they're roughly humanoid in shape. It says here, right, coarse red hide, bipedal like other humanoids, massive toad-like head, shaped like that of a red slod. It says they have chitin-like incrustations on their skin that provide some natural protection. But more importantly, we're here to talk about what are their abilities. So if we jump down to see what they are, we can see that they are considered... So Outsider doesn't exist in 5th edition. Outsider was like a type of creature like Fey or humanoid. Outsider was for anyone who was extraplanar, right? So like an Azamar, I think they were considered outsiders. They might have been plane touched. There are a lot of different concepts for this. So they were from another plane, right? So being extraplanar or an outsider, they couldn't be affected by things like charm person or dominate person because they're not a humanoid. We're going to cut that. I don't think we're going to use that for this. They're medium size. They have land speed of 30 and they have dark vision out to 60 feet. We can keep all of that. That's pretty standard stuff. Other things they had here, right, was leap. They have, I would probably copy over the Grung's standing leap ability. I think that would work pretty well. They're frog-like in nature. It says they treat the Analut, which I think is a specific extraplanar weapon, as a martial weapon rather than an exotic weapon. That was terminology from 3.5. We'll cut that. They did get natural armor, though. It says skin incrustations. They had to protect them, and they got a +2 bonus on spot and search checks. We'd probably, if we're doing 5th edition style, just give them proficiency in perception. We might give them the +1 like armor class similar to what Warforged had, but I'm thinking standing leap, dark vision, the list or the proficiency in perception checks, and then again they don't actually. This is a race that didn't have any ability score adjustments in any way. So I'm thinking because, and again, obviously this is all going to change with Tasha's when that kind of stuff's out, but I would say we'd give them, I don't know, Common and Celestial, maybe as a language type, it says, or Abyssal, where their bonus languages, and maybe we give them a +2 Strength, +1 Constitution, something like that, or maybe a +2 Strength, +1 Wisdom. They're perceptive in nature, but their big, huge, interesting thing that we'd have to make a specific mechanic for is the Neraphim camouflage. And this is really interesting. So it says when charging an opponent or using a thrown weapon, they can use a technique known as motion camouflage, or known as Neraphim camouflage to other races. And it says this is what predatory insects use to trick their prey into thinking they're stationary, even though they're moving closer. The target creature can be fooled into believing the charging Neraph or the Neraph's thrown weapon is in fact not moving closer, or moving closer but only very slowly. A Neraph can make one camouflage attack per enemy per encounter, so this was like once a fight you could do this. We might make this once a turn, we might make this maybe once a short rest. Creatures that are subject to a Neraph's charge or that are targeted by a weapon thrown by the Neraph may not, so it says basically may not apply their dexterity bonus to their armor class. This was a concept called flat-footed, which is if you were caught off guard, that was the whole concept back in 3.5. If you were caught off guard, you couldn't apply your dexterity bonus to your armor class, because the thought process was it doesn't matter how good if you're not aware to actively react and dodge something, how can you apply your dexterity bonus to your armor class? You can't, because you're not aware to be able to dodge out of the way. So, and then it says, all conditions that pertain when a foe cannot apply their dexterity bonus, blah, 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 applies. And that's it. So that was a unique mechanic they had added. So it was once per enemy per encounter. So if you had 5 enemies, you could do it 5 times, but it only works on the first time you attack an enemy. We don't really have that concept, so I guess we'd probably go with it gives you advantage in some way. So could this be the first time you would attack an enemy on a turn? You could have advantage on that attack roll. Is that too powerful? It's like a pack tactics, sort of. And this would obviously make you a very strong rogue. If you decided if you could give yourself free advantage, it might be, once a short rest, something like that. Like the first time you attack a creature in combat, you can you can give all the flavor text here, but you can give yourself advantage on that attack roll once a short rest, maybe proficiency bonus times per long rest, something like that. Either way, it was an interesting, unique concept, and I really enjoyed it. And they're toad slod type people, and I thought that was pretty cool. Number 6. I think it's Asherati. They are a humanoid looking creature. They kind of have like a gray alien sort of vibe to them. At least that's what I get from them. But this is from the book Sandstorm. This was sort of the desert survival guide, if you will. We had a series of books, I've described them before. We had Storm Rack, which was sort of the open sea. We had Frostburn, which was the tundra. We have Sandstorm, which was the desert. And we had like the Cityscape one, which was dealing with the urban city. So this is from the desert kind of sand-based book. And it basically says they look human under most circumstances until their rust-red skin begins to glow with a light all on its own, or they dive headlong into the nearest sand dune, disappearing without a trace. Again, a humanoid with smooth skin, color of rust. Let's see. They're lithe, graceful swimmers of the dunes. No body hair. Eyes are color of ivory. They're usually 5 to 6 feet tall. So if we look at their abilities, they're medium. Again, this is another race that doesn't really provide us with an ability score improvement. We're probably going to give them a +2 dexterity, maybe +1 wisdom. The +2 dexterity kind of fits the whole lithe concept. Medium size, 30-foot land speed. Again, natural armor was pretty common back in the day, so we probably aren't going to give them that necessarily. They had this ability, natural dryness. They're very dry creatures. To survive, they only need to drink 1/4 the amount of water per day that humanoids of their normal size require. So we could add that. That's a unique ability that we haven't really seen before. And they're kind of their main interesting thing is a sand swim. It says, as merfolk is to the sea and Asherati is to the sand, ash, dust, or even soft sand, but not slip sand, packed dirt, or rock. Slip sand's like quicksand. And Asherati can sand swim through materials at their land speed while wearing light armor or carrying a light load. Their speed drops to 5 feet if they wear heavy armor or carry a medium load. We don't really have the concept of different weight loads in 5th edition. So anyway, they breathe normally while under the sands. This supernatural ability doesn't allow them to breathe in mediums other than sand, dust, or ash, nor does it allow them to hold their breath longer than normal in water or dangerous gases. So it's just a really unique ability that they can basically just dive into the sand and swim through it like water and breathe in it. And it's, again, it's not just sand, ash, or dust. It's just a different ability, something we haven't seen. Again, probably going to be a very situational race you're going to use, probably in a desert-themed campaign or something like that, but interesting nonetheless. And then they have this a body lamp ability here. They can make their skin glow at will, providing bright light out to 60 feet and shadowy illumination out to 120 feet. In a medium of loose soil such as sand, dust, or ash, a peculiar quality of the light allows an Asherati to make out solid objects up to 60 feet away. Under the sand, this light is sufficient for navigation and general identification of objects, but not for reading, recognizing individuals, or other similar feats of finer perception. This ability does not allow them to see invisible creatures or creatures with concealment. Other creatures in the sand with an Asherati do not gain this special sight, but they can see the sand take on a warm orange glow. So the concept of this is you can actually almost use this like a tremor sense to see while you're under the sand. You can't, again, make out finer detail, but you can like see paths and what's going on. And then they also have the ability once per day, they could basically, like as a burst, sort of solar flare themselves, and it says they could dazzle a creature for 30 minutes, or within 30 feet for a minute with a Constitution save. I don't know if we'd add that in. We could add some sort of momentary blinding effect where you sort of just brighten yourself up for a second. They had the heat endurance feat. We might just probably give them resistance to fire damage. I'm going to ignore the weapon familiarity because it's a specific item. They had proficiency or +2 bonus and move silently and hide checks. We might give them proficiency in stealth. So right now we're looking at sand swim, probably a +2 dexterity, +1 wisdom maybe, possible fire resistance and stealth perception. And they also gave them this thing, water vulnerability. So we talked about how they don't need a lot of water. If they get too wet, it hurts them, which is kind of a weird one, right? So their dry bodies absorb water rapidly when they are submerged. If completely wet, they take a -1 penalty on all attack rolls, ability checks, and skill checks. If they're immersed in water, they cannot hold their breath and must immediately begin making Constitution saving throws. I don't think we're going to do that. It's sort of like the inverse of the water dependency that like Grung and Lakatha have. It does the opposite. I might just remove that. Or if you want to give them a whole bunch of other abilities, like the dazzling blind kind of ability, then maybe you use this sort of vulnerability or something to offset that to make the race not too overpowered. I don't know. They were unique and interesting, and I like the concept of the sand swim, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Number 5. The Fey'ri. Not to be confused with a fairy, different stuff, or Fey in any way. Like, they're not really Fey in any way either. This is an interesting race, and it might not have a place in 5th edition, and I'd be fine if you told me that was the case. It's an interesting concept, and there was some of these, and we've seen some of them that exist in 5th edition in the form of monsters. But basically, it's when an elf, it's specifically sun elves, but we'll just go with elf in general, breeds with a demon, and it says specifically here to attempt to strengthen their bloodlines, a Fey'ri here is produced. It's a plane touched, again, plane touched where things like creatures, descended of a creature from another plane, like a Genasi was a plane touched, as was a tiefling and an Azamar back in 3.5. It says, marked by their fiendish blood, Fey'ri are unique among other plane touched, and that they have a self-sustaining community. So they, where does it say? Are plane touched that breeds true among their own kind. So they continue to make more Fey'ri. It says they're not ostracized by other plane touched creatures because they kind of live in their own self-sustaining community. Again, of sun elves or demons, and it says usually of a succubi or probably an incubi. Having bred with these demons and among their own kind, Fey'ri are a distinct race and share common fiendish traits. In general, they resemble sun elves, although they all have large bat-like wings, and they have one of the following additional features: either fiery red eyes, fine scales all over their body, long pointed tails, bat-like ears, or deep red skin. I know a lot of people have a love for these creatures. These could possibly be a sub-race of elf. I could actually see in 5th edition it going that way, kind of how like they made Eladrin and Shatterkai, which were their own kind of individual races, elven sub-races. You could make the Fey'ri an elven sub, like a fiendish sub-race for elves. Let's take a look. So you can see here some artwork showing off different varieties of them here. What do they get? So they do get ability score improvements here. Again, if we're going to make this a sub-race of elf, we'll pick an ability score. It looks like I guess maybe intelligence would be the one here. They have dark vision. Again, if we're choosing this as a sub-race of elf, this actually alleviates a lot of our decision, right? Dark vision is 60 feet. Okay, we've got that. Low light vision isn't a thing. Pull that out. Immunity to magical sleep spells and effects. So we'd have Fey ancestry, which would be our advantage on effects against charm and immunity to sleep. That is good. We have proficiency in perception as well. And then which covers the +2 race bonus to, listen, search, and spot checks. And then what else does the Fey'ri get? Well, we know they all have wings. So it says here that they have a 40-foot fly speed. Maybe we just give them the wings and the fly speed. And then the only other thing we have here is it has a bonus to, it says will saves against enchantment spells. That's covered in Fey Ancestry's ability to give advantage on charm effects. And then it says alter self. They can cast alter self at will to assume any humanoid form and can remain in it indefinitely. That's sort of like a changeling style ability. We might give them alter self, the spell, or maybe disguise self. And what else do they get? Anything of interest here? They're considered an elf, but they're also outsiders. And then they had a whole bunch of spell-like abilities here, right? You can see this charm person, clairaudience, clairvoyance, darkness, detect thoughts, dimension door, enervation, suggestion, etc. So I think what we'll probably do is sort of mimic the way the drow are handled, where they get a couple of different spells. So again, we get a lot of interesting stuff from the base race of elf. We give them wings. That's a pretty good ability that will kind of offset, I feel like, a drow's superior dark vision, sunlight sensitivity, and then also the elven weapon training. So they'll get wings with a fly speed of 40 feet. And then we probably give them a couple of spells similar to what a drow has. If we look at this, darkness, dimension door, etc., we give them a cantrip of some time. Maybe we give them friends as the cantrip. And then eventually they would get a 1st level spell. We could probably go with charm person, and then at level 3, and then at 3rd level, or we could go with disguise self. And then I think alter self is a 2nd level spell. We could give them that at 5th level. And that would kind of be an interesting way to just establish this as an additional fiendish sub-race for elves. Let me know your thoughts. I'm curious. I know a lot of people have a really deep love for this particular kind of race. And it's one that I was never super interested in, but I read through and I like the lore of it. So it'd be cool to kind of bring it into 5e. Oh, also, this is in the Races of Faerun book. Number 4. Whisper Gnome. This is a gnome subrace added in Races of Stone, which is sort of the book all about the different sort of the dwarves, the gnomes, and so on. And it says they resemble common gnomes, but they lack the jovial nature and easy outlook on life that their more common relatives enjoy. They are creatures of stealth and suspicion, and yeah, they're kind of recluses. So again, slightly taller than other gnomes, skinny, almost gaunt. Skin ranges from light gray to light green, gray blue eyes, and so on. So what do they get? So we're going to be obviously making a sub-race of elves. So we're going to get all the base race things of gnomes. So we're going to get all the base gnome things, which is 25-foot movement speed, small size, 60 feet of dark vision, and then advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws against magic. So what we're kind of looking at, the unique things of the Whisper Gnome are kind of down here, right? A bonus to stealth abilities, hide and move silently. Again, a bonus to perception abilities as well. And then certain spell-like abilities. So we don't, sub races of gnomes don't get a whole lot. They usually get like one interesting mechanical thing and then like a flavor bit. So like in my gut, I would love to say let's go with, like, if you look at their spell like abilities, once a day they get to cast the silence spell. And then if they had a high enough charisma score back in the day, they could also get ghost sound, mage hand, and message, right? Well, ghost sound could be minor illusion, right? It's kind of relatively close to it. But we already have a gnome subrace, and I think it's the forest gnome can cast minor illusion and then also communicate with small beasts. So I think for this one, we might give a +1 charisma, be our charisma gnome here as the subrace ability score. And like, I kind of just want to give them silence once a long rest. I don't know if that, I mean, that's giving you access to a second level spell at, level 1. So that's a little on the potentially overpowered side. But like, that's kind of one of the unique things. And they are the Whisper Gnome. Like, you could go Pass Without Trace, I guess, instead. But silence, I think, fits the best. And like I said, I'd love to make it, you get proficiency in stealth checks, and then you also get to cast silence once a long rest, but that doesn't really fit in my brain. So that's too much. So I guess maybe just silence? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Number 3. So the Tibbit is gonna I can already anticipate this being someone's favorite new race. So this I have here in the Dragon Compendium, which was just a compilation of a bunch of different Dragon magazines. But you can see here it was originally in Dragon Magazine number 135 from back in 1988. But because 3rd edition didn't come out, then it was updated in the Dragon Compendium, sort of compiling all the old stuff and bringing them forward to, I think, 3rd edition, the Dragon Compendium is. But they're also known as cat wares. And most importantly, this is a creature that can basically just turn into a house cat. That's it. That's pretty much the whole thing, right? The ability to turn into a common house cat. They arose from felines kept as familiars in ages past, a powerful magic that allows a familiar to gain intelligence, and magic abilities slowly filter from one generation of cats to the next. Whether Tibbits evolved from a natural process, divine intervention, or a sudden surge in the magic running through their ancestry, none can say. They've never existed in large numbers, and their tendency to spread across the world leaves them with a fractured, incomplete racial history. So here you can see your Tibbit in kind of normal form, and then cute kitty form. So again, small, stealthy, dark-skinned people with pointed ears and cat-like eyes. Their hair tends to grow thick and long, and males tend to grow sideburns. Skin tones range from tawny brown to black, and occasionally they have pure white skin. Their hair color matches the wide range of colors it found in house cats, and in their cat form, they look like fat but energetic house cats, identical to and indistinguishable from any common domesticated breed. And here you can see one in the process of transforming. Let's talk about what they get. So, they are shapeshifter. Again, I don't think we technically have shapeshifter as a type. You would just be a humanoid. But here you get a +2 dexterity, -1 strength. I'm going to say probably +2 dexterity, +1 wisdom. Maybe +1 charisma for your cute kittiness. Your small size, it says it has a land speed of 20 feet. We'll probably make it 25 to bring it more in line with the other small races in 5th edition. Dark vision, up to 60 feet. That's standard. And then feline transformation is sort of your whole deal, which is you can turn into a cat. So it says right here, as a standard action, they can transform. So as an action into a house cat. It says it's basically like a lesser wild shape, right? It says it's similar to the polymorph spell, but with a number of key changes. Their size becomes tiny. This is 3rd edition. You got bonuses for being smaller in size. But let's see. Natural. You get a claw attack. You can transform back from a cat back to their humanoid form as another action. I must wait an hour to turn back into a cat after reverting to their humanoid form. So that pretty much makes it short rest. Usually performs, their equipment transforms with them. They gain the scent ability. So I'm going to look up what a cat gets just a base cat in 5th edition. And I think that basically what we're going to do is we're going to treat this kind of like we're basically going to treat it like the druid's wild shape ability. We can't just say that outright, but you know, as an action, you can transform yourself into a cat. But you keep your mental ability scores, your intelligence, your wisdom, your charisma, and you take on the physical ability scores, strength, dexterity, constitution of the cat. So yeah, you would basically get, and for all intents and purposes, you are a cat. So you will get a cat's claw attack, which has a 0 to hit and a 1 point of damage. And you'd get keen smell, advantage on perception checks that rely on smell. And you'd, in all other intents and purposes, be a house cat. And then if you look down here, it says they also get a bonus on perception checks. And then it says jump and escape artist checks. We don't really have those. So we'd probably say +2 dexterity, either +1 wisdom or +1 charisma. You are small size with a 25-foot movement speed, dark vision out to 60 feet. You have the ability to transform into a standard house cat. And then the house cats have a climb speed, so that covers that. And then I would give you proficiency and looks like acrobatics and perception checks. And that would be how I bring this race into 5th edition. It's essentially like a mini person, like a gnome almost, halfling that can just transform into a cat. And it's super cool and interesting, and I feel like a lot of people would love to play it. Number 2. The Urdunnir, I guess, or Urdunnir Dwarves. These ones I was completely unaware of till I started rereading Races of Fey'ri, which is also where this is contained. So it says sometimes known as Urdunnir Dwarves, a long-forgotten offshoot of shield dwarves that have become one with the earth and stone. Thanks to the blessings of Dumathoin, this is a dwarven god, they can walk through earth and stone as if it were air and shape metal and meld stone with their hands. Many are clerics of Dumathoin, expert smiths, and so on. Children of Dumathoin, as they call themselves, believe that the Silent Keeper, I think Dumathoin is the keeper of secrets under the mountain, I think, transform their ancestors in order to create a race of dwarves who could appreciate the true beauty of the subterranean landscape without needing to destroy it in the process. Averaging 4.5 feet tall, but weighing much more than an adult human. They are stocky and muscular. Their skin is light gray. Their eyes are always silver. Both genders wear their hair long, and males and females have long, carefully groomed beards and mustaches. Hair is a uniform gray color with varying degrees of silver and black highlights. You can see a little bit of an image of one right here. And let's look at what we're going to do. Again, this would be a sub-race of dwarf. So we're going to get all of the standard dwarven abilities, you know, our +2 constitution to start, our, our stone cunning abilities. Let's see here. So we'd get dark vision out to 60 feet, 25-foot movement speed that is not reduced by heavy armor, resistance to poison and advantage on saving throws against poison, training with battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer, proficiency in smith's tools, brewer's tools, or mason's tools, and stone cunning, and then whatever our sub race here will give us. So we'll get a +1 to an ability score of our choice. Probably I'm going to say either strength or wisdom. We already have the poison bit here. So stone walk is probably the unique ability that we want to get. So it says they can pass through stone and earth as if it was air. They can carry up to twice their own body weight with them in this manner. They cannot breathe while in the stone or earth, but must hold their breath while traveling in this manner. So that's kind of their unique thing. And the other stuff they had was the stone shape ability and the shape metal ability. Again, these were spells back in the day, and it says as an 8th level sorcerer, and you may be saying, well, that's pretty nutty to just get that for a race. But it had a thing that was called level adjustment, which basically meant you would start 4 levels behind everybody else. So unless you were playing in a game that started at level 4 or higher, basically you could not play this race. So I'm trying to think of, I don't think we have, oh, you know what? We might be able to use the Earth Elemental. Has like a stone or a Earth Glide ability. So Earth Glide is the, you can burrow through non-magical unworked stone and earth While doing so, you don't disturb the material that you move through. So I guess we'd probably that would kind of be their thing, right? They would get you a +1, maybe strength or wisdom. And then that would kind of be it. That's what you'd get. You'd get Earth Glide. You can move through non-magical, unworked earth or stone. While doing so, actually, I don't even think it has to be it says unworked. You can move through earth and stone as if it were air. And we just say you don't disturb the material while you move through it. But then we would just add in the caveat that you cannot breathe while in the stone or earth. You must hold your breath while traveling in this manner. And I think that does a pretty good job of replicating this sub race relatively easily. And it's just an interesting, unique take on dwarves. And I don't know, I really like it. Number 1. The Vril. I found these was one of my last finds as I was looking through stuff, and I love these guys. First of all, in my mind, they kind of remind me of like a Noivern or a Zubat as a race, and that is awesome. I had never heard of these guys before. They are basically a purple-skinned, black tiger-striped goblinoid that was just tormented by drow and has crazy stuff going on. And this is from the 3.5 book called Drow of the Underdark. Funnily enough, not a Forgotten Realms book, just a standard 3rd edition book. But again, small humanoid with dark violet skin with black tiger stripes on its back and limbs. Dull yellow eyes peer out of a scrunched bat-like face with pointed ears and a wide mouth filled with sharp fangs. It is somewhat stooped and has long arms that hang down past its knees. It says they are a product of dark elf wizard experiments over many generations. They are imbued with innate sonic ability and can alter the consistency of their own flesh. Most Vril are brutally trained as warriors by the drow to weed out the weakest specimens. One of the most interesting things about this is they talk a lot about the stat block for this creature in the book, and they didn't include it when they printed it. They had to release an errata after the fact to actually add in the stat block that tells you any of the interesting thing about the creature, right? So it goes on to say that they're shock troops and defenders of drow cities. I like that it calls a group of Vril tries to space those with dazing shriek ability, which they have. Can you kind of see it here, like a sonic scream that I really like. And they had an ability where there was like a group of them that had a name. I think that was one of the encounters, right? There's all these different sample encounters here that they have. This is stuff we used to get back in 3.5 on the different society of them. And then you can see here, so like here we're on Goblin, and I was like, okay, here's the Vril strategy and tactics on how to deal with them. They actually had several unique feats to their race here, right? To alter their skin shift and their shrieking ability. And then again, I think it has different sample encounters, the ecology, how they see the other races. There's a little bit here about the lore of the Vril and like how you would look them up. And it says right here, drow treat Vril little less than animals, yet generations of specialized breeding have produced unquestioned loyalty. They fear and obey the drow. They share few traits with their goblin kin. The drow wizard who created them sought to expunge many of the race's characteristic weaknesses. Like their cousins, they are malicious little creatures, but while goblins are cowardly and undisciplined, Vril are bold, daring, and organized. Generations of mistreatment at the hands of the drow have also built up a fiercely stubborn resolve. The race now breeds true, but attempts to cross Vril with other goblinoid races produce only stillborn offspring, perhaps as a result of deliberate design. They view ordinary goblinoids as inferior, but have a cautious respect for larger humanoids, such as humans, orcs, and so on. And it says they normally travel in squads. And then it says right here, as characters. So we have this section here, Vril as characters, if you wanted to play one. And it says, for the most part, they're agnostic. They're usually barbarians. It says some are clerics, but they built in this whole backstory of the drow don't allow them to do that. So what do they get? And I do actually think this would not be a goblin subrace because they specifically state they're so vastly different than existing goblins that you can't really, they wouldn't be the same. So here I might give them +2 Constitution is what we're looking at here, and maybe +1, maybe +1 Wisdom, maybe +1 Strength. We don't have size bonuses for being small size. They have a land speed of 30 feet. They have dark vision out to 60 feet. And then it says resistance to sonic 5. That would basically be resistance to thunder damage if we were to add something like that in. And then it says they have a bonus to climb checks and then balance and jump checks. They also had light blindness and vulnerability to poison. I'm going to remove the vulnerability to poison. That was a very unique thing that like they were weak to drow poison because the drow basically beat their race into subservience with poison. I don't like that. We're going to remove that. We could give them their underground race, so sunlight sensitivity seems like it would make sense to give to them. +2 Constitution, +1 to another ability score. Again, 30-foot land speed, 60-foot movement. Maybe we do go with resistance to thunder damage because we're kind of offsetting a lot of this with sunlight sensitivity. And then it has a bonus to climb checks and balance and jump checks. I guess we might just give them a climb speed, give them a 30-foot climb speed as well. And then they have their unique abilities that aren't listed here. And it says, does it say in here? No, basically they have two. Oh, here, special abilities, see above, skin shift and shriek. And I scrolled back up and lo and behold, it's not there because like I said, they forgot to include the stat block that tells you all of that about them in the actual printing of the book. So the errata is back here at the end of it. And if we go all the way down to the bottom, I can get there. Come on, my mouse is being stupid. Where's our errata here? Here's the Vril Warrior stat block. So here you can see it. It has here's the abilities, right? The vulnerability to poison and the light blindness and so on. But here's skin shift is once per day as a move action. We'd probably just make that a bonus action if we were going to. It can alter the consistency of its flesh for a number of rounds equal to 3 plus Constitution modifier. For the duration of the effect, it gains damage reduction 5 against bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage, starting at 4th level, and every 4 levels after that, they gain the ability 1 extra time per day. So essentially, it's kind of giving you almost like a rage style feature where you're getting resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. So how would we do that? I guess in theory, you could maybe make it sort of like a rage, right? As a bonus action, you can give yourself resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage for, a minute. Maybe we make it basically like a rage. It lasts for a minute, but it's once per long rest. And then we could potentially add additional options to that later on. But the kind of unique ability that I'm pretty sure everybody wants, and I kind of want to get to too, is the Shriek. You want to have the Sonic Shriek ability. That's the cool thing. So it says once per day as a standard action. We'd make that an action. You can emit a horrible shriek, and it says either in a 15-foot radius burst centered on you or a 30-foot cone. I think we'd probably just make it the 30-foot cone, a true Sonic Shriek. And it says they're affected. They take a d6 points of sonic damage. That's way too low for us. It's which would be thunder damage for us. And it says on a successful reflex save, which is a dexterity saving throw, based on their Constitution modifier. So it'd be 8 plus proficiency bonus plus Constitution modifier, half damage on a success. And then it says specifically here, it can use it while raging because their favorite enemy or favorite class was a barbarian. And it says its damage increases by a d6 at 3rd level and every 3 levels thereafter, 2d6 at 6, 3d6 at 9, and so on, up to a maximum of 4d6 sonic damage at 12th level. And it says skills due to their longer arms and lanky build give them a bonus to climb checks and balance and jump checks. So again, we're going to give them a 30-foot climb speed, and we're going to give them the Shriek ability. And I guess we could make it an action in a 30-foot cone, and then like it does start off doing only a d6 thunder damage, and it maybe scales with cantrip damage, right? So at 5 it's 2d6, at 11 it's 3d6, at 17 it's 4d6. But here's the kicker: it's unlimited. It is basically like a cantrip. Maybe we cut the 30-foot cone down to a 15-foot cone instead, but it's something you could do every turn, and it's AoE. So I think that could work possibly with this giving you resistance to thunder damage as a base, a climb speed. Maybe you don't need to do skin shift, this sort of limited rage that only gives you resistance to damage. But I don't know, I super love these guys. I think they're awesome. The design is super unique, dark purple skin, bat-like features, tiger stripes. That's right up my alley, right? I love playing unique and interesting races. Plus, there was the concept of all of the different, we can go back and take a look at them. The Vril feats here, right? So you can see these were, again, we might make these as magic items or make them as like a similar feat, kind of like to the Svirfneblin magic feat that deep gnomes have. But so there was Dazing Shriek, and it's when creatures are hit with your Shriek ability, they need to make basically it's Fortitude, but a Constitution save, or be blinded or stunned. And then it was Great Shriek here at the end. Then they were dazed and deafened for a time. Improved Skin Shift increased the amount of damage you reduced. For us, we wouldn't probably do that one. Sudden Shriek made it a bonus action, basically, instead of a standard action. And then they gave them this Vril Drow Slayer, which was you remove the resistance to poison and you're better at killing drow. Again, we're not really going to we're not going to do that one, but because we're not going to give them a vulnerability to poison damage. But either way, I think they're super cool. I would love to make those as a race in 5th edition. I would love to play as one. You'd have to maybe redo a little bit of the background given their, I mean, you could keep some of it, but like they're a very unique race and not common. They will 100% be showing up in my homebrew world because I think they're amazing. And I might alter the backstory a little bit so they're not like so, shock trooper, dazed and confused drow subservience. Doesn't really fit with the 5th edition sort of mindset. And again, if I'm adding them into my homebrew world, I can make up the story for them. But they were just too cool not to show off, and I'm so glad that I found out about them. So let me know your thoughts on these 7 races in the comments down below. This video actually ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would be, but it did allow us to dive in a little bit more into the creation of how we'd add them into 5th edition. And I felt like I could go over that a little bit more easily with all of you with a shorter list of only 7. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm guaranteed Vril is not on anybody's list because I'm pretty sure nobody even knows that they exist. But what are your favorite 3.5e races? I've done 17 now races that I've wanted to take from 3.5 and adapt into 5th edition. Again, probably some of the bigger ones that I care the most about would be like the Ghost Elves and now the Vril. But what are your thoughts? Did I touch on your favorite race in these 17 of mine? Is there something that I completely missed? Some lost book that I didn't even think about that's super interesting with a really unique race? And if there is, and you have a really good one, let me know in the comments, not just what that race is, but why. That was my biggest problem when I was going through these. There's a lot of cool, interesting, unique races that are out there. Obviously, there's hundreds of them. I spent time looking through all of them. But the problem that I kept running into was I'd look through their stat block and they might be a unique backstory and a unique design on what they look like. But they didn't do anything, they didn't have any abilities or anything that made them more unique than any other race. So like if there's a really cool race out there, but all it is basically just a reskin of an elf, and it's a standard like wood elf as far as everything is concerned, to me it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to pick that, at least this go around after I've done my initial 10. I wanted something unique with interesting abilities. Now, obviously you could homebrew and add like, oh, this really cool looking creature, we could give it whatever abilities we want to give it to make it cool and unique. But to me, I was like, let me find something that's interesting looking, has an interesting story, or both, but then also has unique abilities, right? Like that's, again, another reason why I liked the Neraphim. They have that weird camouflage ability. The Vril have a sonic shriek and can shift their skin around to reduce damage. That's really cool stuff. I like that. So anyway, thank you again to my patrons over on Patreon for voting for this to be the video for today. Or technically yesterday, but I'm a little bit slow on getting that out there. Also, take a look at the Jetpack 7 Black Storm Realms Kickstarter. We've continued to blow past stretch goals. We've now unlocked a cool Black Storm space-style dragon, and we have about 50-ish hours left to go before that Kickstarter ends. And as we approach the $90,000 stretch goal, that will be another new subclass designed by me. The one subclass that I designed already, the Gravity Domain Cleric, I did a video on that. A lot of interesting reception. I've made a bunch of adjustments to it based on all of your feedback, and you can actually go and download the PDF that has the Sorcerer and my Cleric in it. Right now, I'll put a link to that in the description below. We are only 2 weeks away from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but the day before Tasha's Cauldron drops is the day my 50K giveaway ends. So I'll have my 50K subscribers here on YouTube giveaway. Link for that in the description below. Last thing before I'm done pimping and shilling my own stuff is I do stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Wednesday. D&D 5.e, D&D 5e gameplay streams. My homebrew campaign and my homebrew world on Tuesdays with an evil campaign that I get to play in at the end of every month. And every Wednesday is the Rod of 7 Parts, where I get to play basically a Jedi Blade Singer run by my good friend Jordan with the silent PH in the middle here on my Twitch channel. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.